15 years. That's how long we were married. 15 years of shared beds, whispered dreams, scraped knees, packed lunches, preschool graduations, and mortgage payments. 15 years of us. And I didn't see it coming. Not the way it happened. Not with her. Not after everything we built. She was the woman I chose when I was young and dumb, and thought love would be enough to carry us through anything. Maybe I was right for a while. Or maybe I was just too naive to see the signs early on. We were never one of those dramatic couples. We didn't throw plates or storm out in the middle of the night. Our love was quiet. Functional. Real. We were solid in the ways that mattered. Or so I believed. We met at a 4th of July barbecue, both of us still in our early 20s, full of fire and optimism. She was laughing with some coworkers, standing barefoot on the grass with a red plastic cup in her hand, the summer sun hitting her hair just right. I was across the yard, flipping burgers on a rusty old grill, pretending not to stare. She caught me once, and instead of looking away, she smiled. I swear that smile took the air out of my lungs. It wasn't one of those rehearsed, "I know I'm pretty" smiles. It was easy, effortless, like she wasn't trying to charm anyone, and that's how she got me. That's how she always got me. We hit it off quickly. Conversations came easy. Her laugh could warm a cold room, and her eyes never seemed to look past you. She saw people. She saw me. We talked about music, politics, books, the kind of life we wanted. I was a guy with a plan, and she was the kind of woman who made everything feel possible. 2 years later, I married her. Our wedding wasn't extravagant, but it was ours. A modest ceremony in a garden with friends and family, the kind of day that gets cemented in your memory not because it was perfect, but because it was real. I remember watching her walk down the aisle, the sun painting her in gold, thinking, this is it. This is the start of everything. And it was. Over the years, we built a life brick by brick. We had 3 kids. Our first came a little earlier than planned, but we didn't care. Parenthood changed us. We went from late-night drives and impulsive movie dates to diaper blowouts and baby monitors, but we were in it together. Every hard night, every broken routine, every messy, chaotic moment, we shared them. That mattered. We weren't perfect. I worked long hours. She juggled a job, the kids, and 1,000 thankless tasks I probably didn't appreciate enough. We argued sometimes. We snapped when we were tired. But we never stopped coming back to each other. That's what I believed anyway. That when things got hard, we'd still reach for each other in the dark. She was more than just my wife. She was my best friend. My co-parent. The person who knew my favorite meal, the song I always skipped because it made me cry, the face I made when I was trying not to lose my temper in front of the kids. She saw me, all of me, and still chose to stay. At least, that's what I thought. Our lives settled into a rhythm. We weren't newlyweds anymore, but we had rituals. Saturday morning pancakes. Friday night movies on the couch. I love you. Text messages in the middle of the workday. Quick kisses before school drop-offs. We tried to make time for each other. Date nights when we could manage a sitter. Coffee on the porch after the kids were finally asleep. I thought we were still us. And then something shifted. I can't tell you exactly when it started, because it happened so slowly. Like a leak in the ceiling you don't notice until there's water dripping on the floor. At first, it was subtle. A little more distance. A little less laughter. The conversations that used to flow became more transactional. Who's picking up the kids? What's for dinner? Did you pay the water bill? But that wasn't abnormal. Life gets busy. People change. I told myself it was just a season, that we'd find our way back when things slowed down. When the kids were older. When work wasn't so demanding. I believed in us. Believed in the 15 years we'd spent building this life. The birthdays, the vacations, the holidays. The nights we stayed up comforting a sick kid. The hospital visits. The Sunday morning grocery runs. The mundane and the meaningful, all of it, ours. I thought that kind of history meant something. And maybe it did. Maybe it still does. But now I lie in that same bed where we used to whisper plans for our future, and I wonder when she stopped whispering them to me. When she stopped choosing us. Because all the while I was working, fathering, loving, she was looking elsewhere. And I didn't see it. Not yet. But I would. And it would destroy me. If you ask anyone what keeps a marriage together, they'll usually name the big things. Trust. Communication. Passion. Compatibility. And those things matter, of course they do. But when I look back at what held us together, what made our life feel full, it wasn't any of that. It was the little things. The mundane. The routines and rituals that, in time, became sacred. That's what I miss the most now. Not the wedding day or the vacations, but the quiet, unnoticed stitches that held our days, and our hearts, together. Every morning, she would make coffee first. Even on the days she had to rush to work, or when she barely got any sleep. She always made sure my mug was waiting for me, the chipped one with the faded New York Giants logo that I never replaced. There'd be a sticky note sometimes, left right there on the counter beside it. Hope today's better. Love you? Don't forget Jack's dentist appointment. You're sexy when you're grumpy, you know that? I kept most of those notes. At least the ones that didn't get ruined by spilled coffee or sticky fingers from the kids. I stuffed them in the top drawer of my nightstand like little proof that she loved me once. That it wasn't all some elaborate performance. That those words were real, even if everything after them wasn't. I used to get home before she did on Fridays. That was our night. Date night, if you want to call it that. Sometimes we went out, rarely, and other times we stayed in. Made a pizza together, opened a bottle of wine, and watched some ridiculous reality show until we passed out on the couch. But she'd always make herself a little extra presentable on Fridays. Not overly done up, just intentional. Her hair brushed with that effortless wave, eyeliner drawn a little darker, maybe a hint of perfume behind her ears. She used to do that just for me. I noticed it because I knew her. I noticed everything about her. The way she curled her toes when she was cold but wouldn't get up for socks. The way she would whisper, "I love you," so quietly right before falling asleep, as if it were a secret she could only tell me in the dark. I knew the way her voice dropped half an octave when she was serious, the way she would squint at the stove like it had personally offended her when something was burning. I knew the exact shape of her silence, when she was tired, when she was anxious, when she needed me to step in without asking. She used to send me texts in the middle of the day. Silly pictures. Memes. Selfies. Thinking of you. Kind of messages. I'd be in the middle of some meeting, glance at my phone, and see her smirking into the camera with that look that said "come home early tonight." And I would. Sometimes I'd bring flowers. Sometimes I'd pick up her favorite Thai takeout. She always teased me for getting the same damn thing every time, but she still stole half of it from my plate anyway. We had 3 kids, and somehow we still managed to keep that spark alive. Or at least we tried. There were dry spells, sure. Stress will do that. Kids will do that. Life will grind you down until you're barely recognizable to yourself, let alone to your partner. But we made time. We carved it out. We had this thing we did when we couldn't get a sitter. After the kids were asleep, we'd sneak into the laundry room and sit on the dryer with a couple beers, pretending it was a bar. Just 30 minutes, maybe less, of grown-up conversation in the quiet hum of a house that needed everything from us. That was our love story. Not glamorous. Not Instagram-worthy. But it was ours. She used to reach for my hand in the car unprompted. We'd be driving to the grocery store or taking the kids to swim lessons, and she'd slide her fingers between mine like it was second nature. I didn't even have to look at her. I just knew that gesture meant we were okay. That whatever we were going through, we were still connected. She made me feel like I mattered. Not just as a husband or a father, but as a man. I never had to doubt that, not then. She used to call me handsome in the mornings when my hair was a mess and my eyes were still swollen from sleep. She'd bite her lip when I stepped out of the shower, whistle playfully when I changed clothes. There was this comfortable, easy chemistry between us. One that made me believe we were still alive inside of it all, even when life felt like a fire hose we couldn't shut off. And I didn't realize it at the time, but somewhere along the way, that version of her, the woman who left notes, who giggled into my shirt, who lit up when I walked through the door, started to fade. She didn't reach for my hand as often. She stopped sending selfies. Stopped teasing me about my predictable takeout order. She stopped playing with her hair the way she used to when she was flirting. The light dimmed, slowly, like someone twisting a knob ever so slightly each day. But I didn't panic. Not yet. I told myself it was stress. That we were just in another rough patch. We'd been there before. We'd pulled each other through worse. This was just another season, I thought. A hard one, sure, but we'd get through it like we always did, together. I was wrong. Because while I was still fighting for the little moments, still believing they meant something, she had already started reaching for someone else. There's a kind of loneliness that creeps in long before you realize you're alone. It doesn't start with silence, or slammed doors, or sleeping on opposite sides of the bed. No, it's far more subtle than that. It starts in the pauses. The half-second delay before she answers your question. The way her smile stops reaching her eyes. The shift in her scent, no longer your laundry detergent, but something new, something expensive, something not worn for you. That's what our marriage became in the months before I found out. Not broken. Not toxic. Just hollowing. I remember the first time I noticed the change. It was a Wednesday night, nothing special. We were cleaning up after dinner, and she was telling me a story about someone at work, some funny office thing. But her voice was off. Animated, yes, but not in the way she usually was with me. It had an edge to it. Like the energy wasn't for me at all. Like I was watching her tell the story to someone else, someone she was trying to impress. That same week, she started chewing gum. Constantly. I know how small that sounds, how stupid. But she'd never been a gum person before. Suddenly, she had a pack in her purse, another in the car, and she was always chewing, minty fresh, always ready, like she expected to be kissed. But not by me. Then came the makeup. She started putting on eyeliner just to go to work. A new lipstick shade showed up. A few new outfits. A blouse I didn't recognize. Perfume, subtle, but intentional. Not the kind she wore for date nights or weddings. This was new. Daily. And it wasn't for me. I wasn't getting the winks. The lingering glances. The thigh touches under the dinner table. I was still getting the stress, the to-do lists, the "Can you take the kids to school tomorrow?" I wanted to believe it was just her reclaiming a little piece of herself. Women do that sometimes, change up their style, respark something. I tried to be supportive. I told her she looked beautiful. That the new lipstick brought out the warmth in her skin. She thanked me. But it was flat. Mechanical. Like I was a stranger on the street giving her a compliment she didn't need. Around that time, she started texting more. Constantly. Her phone, once left face up on the kitchen counter without a second thought, now stayed glued to her hand or buried in her bag. I'd see the screen light up in the evening, her lips twitching at whatever message she read, but she never offered to share. I didn't press. Not then. I told myself I trusted her. And I did, which is what makes all of this feel so goddamn humiliating now. She laughed more too, but not with me. At dinner, with the kids, she'd smile politely. Say the right things. But when her phone buzzed, suddenly she was vibrant. Engaged. Animated in a way I hadn't seen in months. She'd bite her lip reading those messages. Tilt her head and grin. That kind of smile a woman makes when someone makes her feel wanted. Still, I brushed it off. I told myself I was being paranoid. Insecure. We'd been together 15 years. We had 3 kids. A mortgage. A shared Amazon Prime account. We weren't the kind of couple that fell apart. But something kept gnawing at me. I started noticing patterns. She was on her phone late into the night, claiming she couldn't sleep. She began taking longer showers. Every day. Sometimes twice. She had never been the type to primp, but now she'd spend an hour getting ready for a quick trip to the store. Her clothes more fitted. Her phone, always face down. Her mood, elevated, distracted, then suddenly irritable when I asked too many questions. We used to talk about everything. She'd tell me her dreams, her frustrations, her petty gripes about coworkers. But lately, she stopped venting. When I asked how her day was, she'd shrug. It was fine. No details. No stories. No openings for me to step in and be her person. Someone else had already filled that space. One night I asked her outright, "Is everything okay between us?" She didn't answer right away. Just kept folding laundry. Her hands were trembling a little. She said, "Why would you ask that?" "No reason. Just, we don't feel like us lately." She sighed. That deep, tired kind of sigh. "I'm just overwhelmed. You know how things have been." I nodded. I did know. But not in the way she meant. It was around then that I started keeping tabs. I hated myself for it. I never wanted to be that guy, the one who checked the mileage on her car, the one who memorized her lunch breaks. But something deep inside me was screaming that something was wrong, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I began to dread the nights she stayed late at work. My stomach would knot every time she said she had a team meeting, or that she was grabbing drinks with colleagues. And maybe the worst part was that I didn't even suspect someone specific, just someone. I didn't know who. I didn't know when. I just knew I was losing her. And the hardest part? She didn't seem to mind. The problem with doubt is that it doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps. It builds. And when you're in love, real, years deep, kids and vows and late night laundry kind of love, you don't want to doubt. You fight it. You make excuses. You tell yourself the story the way you wish it still was. Because the alternative? The idea that the woman you built your life with is drifting, or worse, cheating, is too painful to accept outright. But doubt has a way of surviving. Even when you bury it under trust, history, and hope, it still finds a way to breathe. For months, I tried not to notice the signs. I let them accumulate in the back of my mind like junk in the garage. Her late nights. Her sudden interest in self-care. The gum. The perfume. The makeup. The goddamn giggles at her phone. All of it. I catalogued every change, every shift in routine, every vague answer. But the human mind can only tolerate so much cognitive dissonance. And one day, something snapped. It was a Thursday night. The kids were asleep, and we were sitting in the living room. She was scrolling through her phone, smiling to herself in that way she used to smile at me. I was watching her from the couch, trying to convince myself it was nothing, that maybe she was watching a funny video or texting a friend. But the smile wasn't for a meme. It was for a person. And deep down, I knew exactly what kind of person. I cleared my throat. "Who's that?" She looked up like I'd interrupted a dream. "What?" "On your phone. You looked happy." "Oh," she said, brushing it off. "Just Chris from work. He sent me this ridiculous meme about our boss. It's stupid." Chris. That was the first time I'd heard the name. And I remembered it, not because it was particularly interesting, but because of how casually she said it. Too casually. Practiced. Dismissive, like she was prepared for the question. From then on, I started noticing how often Chris came up. In passing. In throwaway comments. Chris said the client freaked out again today. Chris got promoted. Chris's wife had surgery last week. The details trickled out, forming a picture I wasn't ready to look at. So I looked him up. Found him on LinkedIn. Married. 2 kids. Worked in accounting. Smug-looking guy with a buttoned shirt and a fake smile. I had no real reason to hate him, but I did. Instinctively. Viscerally. My skin crawled just looking at his photo. The more I paid attention, the more obvious it became. She was talking to him all the time. Morning coffee, midday breaks, late night. She'd smile at her phone the same way she used to smile at me after a well-timed kiss or a shared inside joke. Now, that intimacy, those looks, were reserved for him. One evening, while she was taking a shower, I made a mistake. I picked up her phone. I didn't even unlock it. Just turned the screen on. There were a few messages on the lock screen, his name at the top, the start of a sentence underneath. Wish I could tell you how moo. And that was all it showed. My throat tightened. I placed it back like it was radioactive and sat there in silence, heart hammering like a war drum. She came out 10 minutes later, towel in her hair, humming. She kissed me on the cheek, walked to the kitchen, and I just sat there, stunned. I felt like I was watching my life from outside my body. Watching a stranger take my place in a home I'd built. That weekend, I tried something desperate. I planned a surprise date night. Booked dinner. Got a sitter. I even shaved clean, the way she used to like. When I told her about the reservation, she smiled politely, but there was a hesitation in her eyes. Like she was doing the math on whether she could cancel something else. Still, she agreed. She wore a simple dress. Not new. Not for me. The same perfume she wore to work. The same lipstick from the office days. She was present, but not really with me. We made small talk over pasta and wine, but her phone buzzed every few minutes. She didn't check it at first, but eventually she gave in. I watched her eyes light up again, the same light I'd been trying to reignite for months, and it wasn't for me. I asked her then. Quietly. Carefully. Are you still happy with me? She blinked. Of course. Why would you ask that? You just seem elsewhere. Lately. She stared at me, and for a moment I thought she might confess. Her mouth opened. Closed. Then she reached for my hand and said, It's just stress. Work's been crazy. It was a lie. I knew it. She knew it. And yet I nodded. Because the truth would have been too heavy to carry in the middle of a restaurant. After that night, the walls came down in my mind. The illusion cracked. I began to watch her, not love her. I kept track. She shaved more often. Bought new clothes. Spent more time on her appearance. And all of it, every single effort, was for someone else. Someone who wasn't sharing her bed, but who had clearly occupied her heart. The hardest part wasn't that she was slipping away. It was realizing I was the only one trying to hold on. I think we all imagine it differently, the moment we know. The moment suspicion turns into certainty. Some picture it like a movie scene, dramatic, explosive, full of shouting and shattered glass. But the truth, at least for me, was far quieter. Quieter and crueler. It wasn't one moment, but 100 small ones, all pointing in the same direction until I could no longer look away. By the time I realized what was really happening, I was already broken in ways I hadn't even begun to understand. It was a Saturday afternoon in early spring. The kids were at my parents' house for the weekend. We'd planned it weeks in advance. A little break for us to reconnect, she'd said. I'd been looking forward to it more than I admitted, even to myself. I thought maybe, if we could just talk, maybe if we could laugh together like we used to, maybe she'd come back to me. But she never showed up. She left that morning to run a few errands, promising to be back by noon. Noon turned into 2. 2 became 4. I called her phone. No answer. Texted her. No response. Just silence, heavy and oppressive, like fog rolling into a familiar town and making it feel foreign. I told myself she was just caught up. Maybe she went to a different store. Maybe she forgot her phone charger. Maybe traffic. Always maybe. Always searching for reasons not to believe the thing screaming inside me. When she finally walked through the door at 6:18 p.m., I was sitting at the kitchen table. I hadn't moved in hours. I must have looked pathetic, hunched over, unshaven, staring at the door like a dog waiting for its owner. She acted like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't disappeared for most of the day without so much as a single message. Sorry, she said, pulling off her coat. The line at Target was insane. And I stopped for coffee. You wouldn't believe the crowd today. I just stared at her. She didn't meet my eyes when she said it. She walked straight into the bathroom and locked the door behind her. When she came out, she was freshly showered. Her hair was wet. Her skin flushed pink. Her makeup gone. But she hadn't been home. She hadn't showered at home. That was the moment I knew. Not guessed. Not feared. Knew. Something inside me collapsed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just gave out. Like a rotting floorboard finally cracking under the weight of too many lies. She came to sit beside me on the couch later, pretending like everything was fine. She asked what I wanted for dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. She shrugged and pulled out her phone. A second later, she was smiling at the screen, thumbs moving quickly. That night, while she slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The ceiling fan spun above us in slow, hypnotic circles, and with each rotation, my thoughts circled too. I replayed the last few months. Every unanswered question. Every late night. Every time she turned away from me in bed. Every excuse. Every fake laugh. Every new dress. Every shower. Every text from Chris. I wanted to be wrong. I prayed I was wrong. But when your gut screams loud enough, long enough, eventually it drowns out every lie. The next day, I followed her. I didn't tell her. I just waited until she left for brunch with coworkers, and tailed her car from a few blocks behind. I stayed far enough back to not be noticed, but close enough to see where she was going. It wasn't brunch. It was a quiet, suburban neighborhood I didn't recognize. She pulled into a driveway. Not a restaurant. Not a public space. Just a house. His house, I would later learn. She parked. She didn't hesitate. Didn't look around. Just got out, walked up to the door, and let herself in like she'd done it a dozen times before. I stayed in my car for 20 minutes. Maybe more. I felt nothing and everything all at once. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to the earth. My pulse was deafening in my ears. I drove away without confronting her. I couldn't do it. Not yet. Instead, I waited. The next weekend, I installed a small camera in our bedroom. Discreet. Hidden in the vent near the dresser. I hated myself for it. It felt invasive. Desperate. But I needed to know. I needed proof. Because even with all the signs, even with her walking into another man's house, part of me still clung to the idea that maybe I'd gotten it all wrong. That week, I reviewed the footage every night after work. Nothing happened. Not for days. But then, on a Thursday, it did. She came home early. Alone. For a while. Then, 2 hours later, he arrived. He walked into my home like it belonged to him. Like he wasn't trespassing in the middle of my life. She met him at the door and kissed him, full, slow, shameless. She took his hand, led him into our bedroom, and shut the door behind them. I watched the whole thing from my laptop. My hands were shaking. I paused the video. Played it again. I thought I might throw up. I didn't. I just stared. That was when the numbness set in. Not anger. Not yet. That would come later. What I felt in that moment was something colder. Something deeper. Like standing in the ashes of your childhood home, knowing the fire's long out, but your whole world is still smoldering. I didn't confront her right away. I wish I could say I stormed into the bedroom that night and demanded answers. I wish I had flipped the mattress or screamed in her face, something, anything, to match the fire that was tearing through my chest. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there in the dark, watching the screen go black once they turned out the lights. I stared at the grainy recording of my bedroom door, our bedroom, while they did God knows what inside. The laughter, the low voices, the soft creaking of the bed. I couldn't hear any of it, but I felt it. It echoed in my chest like a drumbeat, steady and brutal. I closed the laptop. And I sat in the stillness of my office for what felt like hours. I didn't cry. Not then. That came later, in waves I couldn't control. That night, I just felt hollowed out. Like something vital had been scooped out of me and replaced with static. The kind of silence you feel behind your eyes. She came home after midnight. The front door opened, and I could hear her heels click against the tile. She hummed as she walked in, that same cheerful tune she used to hum while brushing her teeth, back when I still knew her. It cut through me like a knife. I listened to her move around the kitchen. She poured herself a drink, put her plate in the sink, took off her shoes. It was domestic. Familiar. Infuriating. She came into the bedroom a few minutes later. I was already lying on my side, pretending to sleep. My back was to her. I felt the bed shift slightly as she crawled in. She didn't touch me. Didn't kiss me goodnight like she used to. She just exhaled, content, maybe tired, and pulled the covers over herself. And then she fell asleep beside me. Peaceful. Unburdened. While I lay there wide awake, suffocating in the weight of her lies. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions like a ghost in my own life. Work. Kids. Chores. Smile for the neighbors. Nod at the teachers during pickup. Pretend everything was fine. Pretend I didn't know. But I knew. And that changed everything. I began noticing just how good she was at playing the part. She still packed the kids' lunches. Still made small talk at dinner. Still texted me, "Do you need anything from the store?" Like we were a team. But she had detached herself. Fully. Completely. Her body was here, her voice was here, but whatever part of her I used to have was gone. She wore a mask every day, and it looked like my wife. But it wasn't her. I watched her more closely than ever. And now that I knew what to look for, the tells were everywhere. She took her phone into the bathroom every time. Her ringer was always off. She was constantly tired. She never reached for me in bed anymore, not even out of habit. And I was the only one initiating anything. Hugs. Kisses. Conversations. She'd respond, sure, but it was lukewarm, like someone tolerating a coworker's joke. She used to flirt with me. Tease me. Text me out of nowhere in the middle of the day just to say she missed me. Now, I could barely get a response if I sent her something sweet. The attention, the spark, was gone. But I had seen where it went. And knowing that hurt more than I ever thought possible. It wasn't just that she had slept with someone else. It was that she'd given herself to him in ways she'd stopped giving to me. She shaved for him. Put on makeup for him. Wore perfume for him. Sent him the playful messages that used to be mine. And worst of all, she wanted to. She chose to. And when she came home, she gave me the leftovers. The tired, distant shell of a woman who used to light up when I walked in the room. I started therapy. Quietly. Secretly. I told her I was picking up a new project at work, something that required evening calls with the West Coast. She didn't ask questions. Didn't seem to care. That, in itself, was an answer. My therapist, a quiet, steady man named Alan, told me something in our first session that stuck with me. You're not crazy for needing to be chosen. And you're not wrong for noticing when you're not. That line played in my head for weeks. Because that's what it came down to in the end. She wasn't choosing me anymore. Not emotionally. Not physically. Not in the daily decisions that show a person is invested. She was still here, yes. Still a mother to our kids. Still sitting across from me at the dinner table. Still answering questions about groceries and schedules and permission slips. But the part of her that was mine, the part that used to belong to us, that was somewhere else now. With someone else. And I realized, slowly, painfully, that the betrayal wasn't just in the act. It was in the apathy. In the way she let our marriage decay without even trying to stop it. I wanted to scream. To shake her. To throw my phone across the room and yell, "Look what you're doing to me. Look what you've done to us." But I didn't. Because I knew, even if I did all of that, she still wouldn't hear me. She wasn't listening anymore. And maybe she hadn't been for a long, long time. I waited until I couldn't anymore. I don't know what finally pushed me over the edge. Maybe it was the way she laughed at her phone one night while I sat across the room, unnoticed. Or maybe it was the way she flinched when I touched her shoulder, like my fingers were unwelcome. Or maybe it was just the unbearable quiet that had taken root between us, growing louder with every passing day. Whatever it was, something broke inside me that week. The grief mutated. The sadness turned sharp. It stopped being a slow ache and became something else, something hot, electric, alive. Rage? Maybe. But not wild rage. Not the kind that explodes. This was colder. Focused. I needed her to say it. I needed to hear it from her mouth. To strip away the gaslighting, the deflections, the half-truths. I needed to look her in the eye and hear her admit what I already knew. So I planned it. The kids were with my sister that weekend. We'd arranged the overnight weeks ago, just a little break, we told them. A date night. The irony of that now makes me sick. She came home that Saturday at 7:42 p.m., right on schedule. Hair done. Light makeup. Dressed casual but just a little too nice for a night in. She smelled like that perfume again, the one she only started wearing since Chris came into our lives. I watched her walk through the door with that easy, practiced expression she wore when she wanted me to believe she was fine. I poured us each a glass of wine. Sat at the dining table like nothing was wrong. She took the glass without question, sat across from me, and pulled out her phone. I waited until she took the first sip. "Who is he?" I asked. The words were steady. Calm. Not a whisper. Not a shout. Just final. She blinked. Looked up from her screen. "What?" "You heard me." There was a pause. 1 heartbeat. 2. I could see her calculating, weighing her response. Her lips parted slightly, then shut again. Then came the performance. "Why would you ask me that?" she said, eyes wide, eyebrows raised. Innocence dialed to 10. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I'd seen her pull that same expression when our daughter lied about brushing her teeth. "Don't do that," I said quietly. She stared at me, suddenly still. "You've been seeing someone. You've been talking to him constantly. You've been sleeping with him." "I know. I've known. I have proof. So don't sit there and insult my intelligence by pretending I don't." Silence. The kind of silence that screams. She looked away first. Down at the table. Then back up at me, but this time the mask had slipped. I could see it. The flicker of panic. The internal crumbling. She wasn't ready for this. Her voice was barely audible when she spoke. "It wasn't supposed to happen." I felt something inside me tear. "That's your opening line?" She swallowed. "I didn't mean for it to get that far. We were just talking. I was lonely, and he listened. He understood. And I didn't?" She didn't answer. I slammed my hand on the table. Not hard. Not violently. Just enough to make her jump. Enough to make the wine glasses rattle. "I asked you? I begged you to talk to me. To tell me what was going on. And you fed me lies. You looked me in the eyes every day and lied to me." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't care. Not anymore. "Was it him?" I asked. "Chris?" She nodded once, slowly. "Yes." "How long?" She hesitated. "Don't lie." "Not now." "A few months." "That's bullshit." More silence. Then finally she broke. "Almost a year." I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because my body didn't know what else to do. "A year. A goddamn year." I stood up. Pushed my chair back so hard it scraped across the floor. "You were here every day. Eating dinner with our kids. Sleeping in my bed. Letting me touch you. While you were screwing another man. You let him into your life, into my life, and you acted like everything was fine. Her voice cracked. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't even good. I miss feeling seen. Wanted. Like I mattered to someone. I stared at her. I saw you, I said, almost whispering. I loved you even when you didn't love yourself. When you were exhausted and bitter and barely recognizable, I was still here. And now you're telling me you threw all of that away because you wanted someone to flirt with you. She cried then. She sobbed like a woman who had just realized what she'd lost. But it didn't move me. Because I had already grieved the woman she used to be. And I couldn't find her in the one sitting across from me now. She reached for me, instinctively, and I stepped back. Don't. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sure you are, I said. But I don't think you're sorry for what you did. I think you're sorry you got caught. Her mouth opened, but I walked away. I didn't slam the door. I didn't throw anything. I just walked into the guest room and shut the door behind me. Locked it. I lay down on that stiff mattress in the dark, alone, and for the first time in over a year, I finally slept. The house was quiet after that night. Not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful. Not the kind you get when the kids are finally asleep or when rain taps gently on the windows. This was the kind of silence that presses down on you. The kind that fills every room like fog, thick and unmoving. We moved around each other like strangers. No yelling. No slamming doors. Just cold avoidance, like even our shadows didn't want to touch. She didn't sleep in our bed after that night. I didn't tell her not to. She just didn't. She started bringing blankets into the guest room and sleeping on the couch instead. I never asked where she went after I locked the door. I didn't care. I couldn't. My energy was spent trying to remember how to breathe without a vice on my chest. The kids noticed something was wrong almost immediately. Our youngest asked if Mommy was sick. Our middle child asked why we weren't all having dinner together anymore. And our oldest, only 12, but smart, too smart, just looked at me with wide, watchful eyes like he already knew. I didn't tell them. I couldn't. How do you explain to your children that the person you built their world around lit a match and walked away from it? We told them we were going through a hard time. That we were trying to fix things. It was a lie. But what else could we say? We started marriage counseling 2 weeks later. She brought it up first, said she wanted to try. Said she didn't want to give up on us. Maybe she was telling the truth. Or maybe it was guilt. Damage control. I didn't know anymore, and I wasn't sure I cared. I went because I had to. Because we had 3 kids and a shared mortgage and 15 years of life entwined like vines. Because I didn't want to be the one who walked away first. She already took that from me. The therapist was a woman in her 50s with soft hands and sad eyes. She talked to us like we were salvageable. Like love was a thing you could just sweep up and glue back together if you were gentle enough. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe we could patch the holes. But every time I looked at my wife sitting on that couch beside me, I saw him. I saw her reaching for him. Smiling at him. Undressing for him. And it never left me. Not for a second. She cried a lot during those sessions. Told the counselor she still loved me. Said she didn't know how to turn off the emotional connection she had with Chris. She said she missed his friendship, his humor, how easy it had felt with him. She said she didn't miss the affair itself, just him as a person. I sat there, numb, listening to my wife confess that the man she cheated on me with still lived in her mind rent-free, and I was supposed to accept that. To build something on top of that. How the hell do you rebuild a house when the foundation is still cracked? After the 3rd session, I pulled our therapist aside. I asked her, off the record, if she thought it was worth saving. She didn't answer directly. She said, "You're both here, and that matters. But repair only works if both people are carrying the weight." That stuck with me. Because I was carrying all of it. I was the one planning date nights, trying to reinitiate intimacy, making sure we went to our sessions, checking in. I was doing the work. All of it. And she was just showing up. Going through the motions. Smiling sometimes. Crying sometimes. But she wasn't fighting for this. And that's when I started to realize the real betrayal wasn't just the cheating. It was the way she let go afterward. She didn't flirt with me anymore. No teasing texts. No playful touches. No dressing up just for me. She used to do her hair a certain way when she wanted my attention. She hadn't done it in over 6 months. She used to send me flirty messages during the workday. Now I was lucky if she replied to a simple, "How's your day?" with anything more than, "Fine." When she was with him, she bought new makeup, new clothes. She cared about how she looked. Now, she wore oversized shirts and old pajama pants. I don't care about looks, I never have, but I noticed. Because it wasn't about the clothes. It was about effort. And she didn't put any in for me. One night, I planned a surprise. Got a sitter. Made a reservation at her favorite restaurant. I even wore the stupid button-down she always said made me look dangerously good. Back when she still saw me that way. She came out of the bedroom looking like she'd just thrown something on. Didn't bother with makeup. Didn't even pretend to be excited. The whole dinner, I carried the conversation like a man trying to resuscitate a corpse. On the drive home, she turned to me and said, "Thank you for tonight. I know you're trying." And I realized she wasn't. Not even a little. That night, lying beside her in bed, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. It hit me all at once, like a freight train. She was already gone. Her body might have been beside me. Her voice might still say the right things. But her heart? Her passion? Her effort? All of it had left the room a long time ago. And now I was just a man holding on to a ghost. There's a moment after devastation when everything just stops. No more yelling. No more chasing. No more staying up late rehearsing words you'll never say. Just silence. Stillness. And a strange, hollow sort of peace. I think I reached that point the morning I looked across the kitchen table and realized I hadn't loved her in weeks. Not the real her, anyway. Not the woman sitting there in sweatpants, scrolling on her phone, nodding absently at our daughter's story about school while she buttered a piece of toast. I had loved the memory of her. The idea of who she used to be. The one who laughed with her whole body. The one who kissed me with intention, not obligation. The one who used to look at me like I was something more than furniture. But that woman was gone. And no amount of therapy, patience, or pain was going to bring her back. We lasted another 3 months after that. 3 long, aching, gray-skied months of trying to rekindle something that had already turned to ash. We went to counseling. We talked. We even had sex, twice, both times initiated by me, both times met with a kind of clinical cooperation. Like she was ticking a box. Like she was giving something back, but only what she thought was owed. And afterward she would roll away and sigh, like it was more effort than she could afford. You'd think that kind of indifference would spark anger. But by then, even my rage had dried up. There was nothing left to burn. The truth was, I didn't want her back anymore. I wanted to be wanted. I wanted to be fought for. I wanted her to wake up one morning and say, "I see what I almost lost, and I want to earn you back." But she never did. And slowly, I stopped hoping she would. Instead, she stayed. Quietly. Dutifully. She was a good mother still. A decent roommate. But that's all we were now, cohabiting ghosts, haunting the life we once shared. The final nail came one night when I asked her, not with anger, just a calm, tired sort of curiosity, if she still thought about him. She didn't lie. She paused and then said, "Sometimes." Yeah. There was no drama. No gasps. Just the end. I nodded. I remember standing up from the couch and walking out onto the porch. The night was warm. Crickets chirped. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked at nothing. And I just stood there, barefoot, feeling the grain of the wooden boards beneath my feet. That was the moment I let go. Not out of weakness, Not out of defeat, but out of clarity. You cannot force someone to love you. You cannot beg them back into your arms. And you sure as hell can't rebuild a future with someone who still lives in the past. The next day, I told her I wanted a separation. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just nodded slowly, like she'd been waiting for me to catch up. Like she'd made her peace long before I had. We told the kids a week later. That was the hardest part. Our daughter cried. Our middle son shut down. The oldest, again too wise for his age, asked if this meant we wouldn't all be together anymore. I told him the truth. Not the way we used to be. But we'll always be your parents. We'll always love you. That doesn't change. We moved forward. Slowly. Cautiously. She moved into a rental apartment across town. I kept the house, mainly so the kids could stay in the school they knew, in the rooms they grew up in. We agreed to joint custody, and for the most part, we've handled that like adults. People think divorce always ends in flames, courtrooms and custody battles and betrayal aired out like laundry. But sometimes, it just ends in exhaustion. In the quiet, aching realization that there's nothing left to fight for. That was us. I won't pretend I'm okay. I still have nights where I lie awake and wonder if I could have done something different. If I missed some crucial moment. If I pushed too hard, or not hard enough. If I should have yelled more? Or forgiven less. But those nights come less often now. I started running again. I signed up for a men's support group. I picked up a few carpentry tools I hadn't touched in years and built my son a bookshelf. I go to therapy once a week. Not to fix myself, but to find myself again. The man I was before I got lost in someone else's indifference. As for her, I don't know what she feels now. And I've stopped trying to figure it out. She still texts me sometimes. Pictures of the kids. Updates. Logistics. She signs the messages with, thanks, or, talk soon. Never with warmth. Never with anything close to what we once were. That's fine. I don't need warmth from her anymore. I need honesty. I need peace. I need a life that isn't shaped around someone who once chose to burn me to feel desired again. And now, for the first time in years, I'm starting to imagine what that life might look like. It doesn't involve forgiveness, not in the way people think of it. I don't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I release her. From the pedestal I kept her on. From the expectations I chained to my own worth. She was the mother of my children. My best friend. The woman I built a life with. And the one who chose to set fire to it. But I walked out of the flames. Scarred. Stronger. Free.